Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Here we are again with our weekly update on themes that bother us.
Yes.
So I'm Nirvana Diaz.
I'm Amanda Bressler.
And I'm Raymond.
The unpaid intern is on vacation.
Lucky her.
Vacation.
Disgusting.
See, that's how unpaid she is.
I know.
Disgusting.
She's on vacation.
That's why she'll get no money.
No money.
No money.
That's why she's unpaid.
And that's why the only thing that she can afford is the Jersey Shore.
Yes, Seaside Heights.
Aww. Poor intern.
But it's true.
So this week's theme, to carry on things that make us laugh, is censorship.
Yay!
And we're talking about censorship in all of its forms, not just artistic censorship, but journalistic censorship.
Or just censorship in just general.
In general. So the main thought that I've come across is, as of recently, there is a journalist whom I respect and follow, and he's just left YouTube. And he's decided to go to Rumble.
A gentleman named Glenn Greenwald.
Yes.
Who's fairly popular, fairly good.
Yeah, he's fairly popular. He's fairly well known. If you know of Edward Snowden, you know that Edward Snowden had a movie about him, and the journalist in that movie was Glenn Greenwald. And it's interesting to me that people have given up on YouTube so much. People keep saying about putting pressure on systems and making people work for you or making a system work for you. People have kind of just given up on that.
Yeah.
They've just completely given up trying to pressure people, and they're just walking out of a bad relationship. That's what it's starting to feel like.
It feels like everything is
You're not pulling
like
anything.
You're either in a toxic relationship and you don't know it, or you're in a toxic relationship and you don't know how to leave it.
Right.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think for a long time, everyone went,
It's kind of the latter.
I need to
too.
stay with YouTube.
We know YouTube is bad, but there's no
no
platform
platform.
that equals it.
It's kind of like Pornhub.
Yes.
Yeah. I know he hits me, but you don't know him like I do.
Right. I know she hates
I
me.
can fix him.
But you don't know her like I do. I
Yeah.
can fix her.
Oh boy.
Because we all know it works both ways, ladies and gentlemen. And
Yes.
everything in between.
Just ask Amber Heard
Simping
and
for a
Johnny Depp.
platform.
Oh,
Just-
poor boy.
Just ask Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just slapping each other around.
Yep.
But yeah, we actually have the thought of, yes, certain things are banned from YouTube now because of common
Content.
sense content warnings, or we don't agree with these pieces of media.
Yeah.
And obviously we all agree they should be banned. But one of our kind of musings was, if YouTube, hypothetically, let's say, was around in the early to mid 80s
Or 90s.
or the 90s, wouldn't you have gotten anyone who's screaming anything about gay rights banned?
Right, yeah.
Because suddenly that's something that goes against community standards.
Yeah.
And homosexuals deserve to die because it's the mid 80s.
I mean,
And
not even...
AIDS is a homosexual cancer. Let
Yes.
them
Right.
fall to it,
Right.
etc. Because it's the mid 80s.
Right.
And if you would come out in favor of the homosexuals, or say something like Stonewall
Or
fucking...
you're automatically assumed as being gay.
Or the Stonewall protest, it would have been called the Stonewall Riot. And all these gay men just didn't know their place and decided to hit our honorable cops.
Yeah.
As opposed to the cops tried to, bang
Like-
in the door on, one of the very few openly gay bars left in the city. At that moment.
At the time. But it's also like YouTube aside, I mean SNL at the time as well. They're like growing up watching SNL from the late the early 2000s till on close to present. The amount of jokes that they were able to pull back then makes me go, how were they able to do it back then?
And stay on the air.
And stay on the air. Whereas now, they wouldn't even go near a joke like that
Right.
without fear of either being censored or completely pulled from the air.
With
I used to-
Or like when my parents, when SNL even first started, when my parents started watching SNL before,
In the 70s.
in the 70s, it was insane. The jokes were insanely funny because they didn't have to worry about censorship or political correctness or offending people.
Chevy Chase's big
Chevy Chase!
Chevy Chase's big break was playing president at the time, Gerald
Ford.
Ford, and falling
Falling
all
on
the damn
everything.
time. Like he's Homer Simpson or Bugs Bunny. He would just constantly take pratfalls and go, "Welcome to Saturday night, New York City."
And
or blah, blah, blah.
the weekend update when we would call what's her name, a slut.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
Jane, you ignorant slut. And you would not be able to say that now because A, you would get like all the feminists up in arms, and B, you would just be like very anti-woman for
But
saying something like that. But not. But
Even
that
in
was
that
at the
era,
time.
Jane, you
Jane
ignorant
Ignorant
slut
Slut
was
was
meant to be ironic.
ironic.
Because it was the way, say, a traditional newscaster would respond to you for being a full-blown human.
Right.
You're not a full-blown human. You're a lady. You're what we call an incubator.
Right.
So, know
Those
your
are my
place.
life purposes.
Yes.
Yeah, Jane, you ignorant slut.
Yes.
Was now, like, calling you out on every level. How dare you be a slut? You should be just owned by one man.
Yes.
Right. And be his incubator.
Yes.
That's the way it works.
Yes, exactly.
But again, we were talking about so many things that would have been censored 30 years ago
But can we
that are
talk
now
about-
seen as commonplace, whereas the things that are seen as commonplace 30 years ago are censored now.
Exactly.
But just
I mean,
even a little more recently, Stephen Colbert.
yeah.
That was kind of more interesting flip for me.
Do you mean the
Yeah.
Colbert Report?
Right.
Because
Yes.
he retired after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
body
recall him
double.
doing anything after
Right.
the Colbert Report, and that's sad. He should have done more, like movies or something. Like he had so much to give to the community and
You're
to
right.
the world
Yeah.
at large that I'm sorry the man retired after the Colbert
Yeah.
Report,
Yeah,
went
it's
off
true.
Comedy
Yeah.
Central.
It's very sad.
Who's the guy who took over for the Late Show?
I don't know.
David
I don't-
Letterman.
Oh.
David
Oh,
Letterman. He was
okay.
very good too.
He
but
was very good.
He was kind of a boomer, and he liked wearing shoes in his suit, and that was kind of like his
And
gimmick.
he's still doing
But
it, right?
I don't know. Is he still alive?
I
Probably.
think
He's
probably
on
still
Netflix,
alive.
right?
I think so,
Hulu,
yeah.
Something like that.
something?
Something somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well. You know the reality I prefer to the reality that is.
Yeah.
No.
No, but all jokes aside, being that we live in
They
a
make life easier.
Yeah, but the fact that we live in a constant joke. But jokes aside, with censorship, it's just that how far can censorship go before you're just completely silencing not even an entire community, but the entire state as it is.
Right.
How far until you're just censoring an entire movement?
Exactly.
And
Whether
the problem
whether
is
it
the
be
question
violently or just like digitally,
But the
or
question
whatever
is,
we call this.
the concept
Socially.
is, if
Socially.
I don't like what you're saying, you've always had that problem. Like, for example, Al Gore's wife, Tipper Gore, and the
Oh.
problem with rock music back in the day. So it's not even
Or
something
rap.
Rap
or
music.
Rap.
It's
It
not
was
even-
mainly rap, let's be honest, but then it was
Twisted
also
Sister had to
it was
come before Congress also.
well, not
So
to,
this is
to
not
cut you off too
new.
much, but Tipper Gore was basically head of a campaign that put all the parental
Right.
advisory stickers on all the CDs you might have bought.
Oh,
Yes.
that's why that's a thing. That's why
Welcome to the party, millennial.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very much Tipper
That
Gore.
was Tipper Gore.
Tipper Gore
Fuck that bitch.
led
No,
something
No,
that was
no,
very much
seriously.
like one of the main headline getters back in the day was Ice-T was in a metal band, and his metal band decided to put out a song called Cop Killer,
Ugh.
and that was suddenly, can you believe what they're saying about these police? Can you believe what they're saying, how you should kill a cop who accidentally shoots a man? But you should kill them, how could you?
Accidentally.
How could you?
Not all
quotations.
cops are bad.
You
No,
must have a
that's not-
warning signal on your fucking CD.
But if you're a bad
Bad
cop,
you're a bad cop.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like they're.
But in her day, if you mention anything about the cops, clearly you're the evil.
Yeah.
Clearly you're the one who needs to be stopped, or at least stopped from warping our poor little innocent children's
Yeah,
minds.
the fuck the police.
So everything came up with a parental advisory sticker on it, which in my gen, I was 12, 13 when these stickers like started getting popped on CDs. CDs were a thing. We'll go into that later. But I was
had a
12,
Walkman, I
13.
know.
Yeah. I had a Discman. That's cool.
That's what that was. That's
So
what it was
from the
called.
future.
I
Right.
had a Walkman.
I had a Walkman.
I had cassette
But
tapes.
all of these things with the stickers on them just meant buy me.
Buy me.
Buy me. We have the real shit. We're NWA. We're Megadeth. We're whatever. We're saying shit that's so real that the Republicans and the Demon Rats are trying to ban us. Go for it. And that just meant give them your money for the CD.
It's interesting to me that the generation who grew up watching their parents do this. You know what I mean? So you were
Yeah.
17, 18-year-olds when you watched your parents do this. You were 14 when you watched your parents do this.
I wasn't even born yet.
You weren't even born yet
Gross.
when you watched your parents do this. But the fact that
Barely
you
human.
you're going in so hard now. Like, how did you feel about what your parents when they did this shit? You probably thought that they were being ridiculous, that they
Probably.
were overreacting, that they were going too far. How is it that then the generation that is now in charge has gone even
Further.
Yes.
than that step that you thought was ridiculous that your parents made.
Yeah.
How did you become your parents?
We traded in the satanic panic of the 80s, which was anything that mentions Satan or the devil, or even in a casual way, something like Black Sabbath, which had a song called Children of the Grave,
Right.
Oh.
which was basically, if you listen to the lyrics, about how the flower power hippie children would now rise up over their parents and say love is more important than anything.
Right.
Like your Children of the Grave was meant ironically, and none of the boomers got the irony.
Right.
They just understood Children
Devil.
of the Grave, devil, etc.
But you
Cancel
most
it.
likely as a teenager got the irony, and yet now you are in charge. Your finger's on the button.
But
Yeah.
one of the
What are
lines
you
from that
doing?
song is, to show the world that love is still alive, you must be brave.
Yes.
No, they're clearly Satanists. They're
Right.
clearly the devil-worshipping cultists who are stealing our children. Those turned out to be Jeffrey Epstein types.
Right.
But
Right.
but no, I'm sure they didn't listen to heavy metal. They were probably more into like Sinatra.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
even then,
Or
Sinatra
like-
was
Or the Bee-
transgressive
or the
for
Bee
his
Gees.
time.
They were listening to fucking Thelonious Monk and still abducting your children.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
So fuck your banning of music. You were completely wrong-headed.
I mean, to be fair, like when I was growing up, like artists who I admire and adore, like Lady Gaga, one of her,
Transgressive.
she was transgressive, but she was probably like one of her. I forget which album, but one of her albums had a parental guidance sticker on it, and I was like,
Of course.
"This is Lady Gaga. What could she possibly say?"
She's talking about your poker face and how
after that.
that's kind
But-
of rigging a poker
but-
poker game, so
yeah,
you shouldn't
exact-
get into that.
But I think it was the Born This Way album that had the parent advisory. What are you advising against? That
Too much gay rights.
but I was gonna say
I'm
too
advising
much,
against
too
gay
much,
rights.
like against gay rights, being able to accept who you are as a person and not like care about what society says about you. You are made the way that whatever religion you are, your maker made you,
Right.
and that is who you are, and there's nothing to be ashamed of.
But I would say
But that's a parental advisory.
But I would say part of
to
the
know.
problem is we're a puritanical country at our roots,
Yeah.
and God made you that way. Their answer would be to give you a cross to bear, that He made you homosexual, but you
But
should
where
never
does it-
act on the homosexuality. That's your cross to bear,
How,
etc., etc. God made you perfect, except for that whole thing of liking people with the same genitals.
But
you have.
here's the thing: where in the Bible does it actually say that homosexuality is a sin? If you read the text, it does not say anything about homosexuality.
It
Leviticus.
says
But when was that published? But when was
Well-
that version of the Bible published? It was probably not published till like at least the 1940s.
And even then,
So, but even then, but before that, if anything, it was probably talking about pedophilia more than talking about homosexuality.
even
you
then,
have to
there's a
also
whole
remember,
window
yeah.
of belief that says Leviticus 3 dash whatever the fuck. I don't care
know
about
what
your fan
chapter
fiction.
in Leviticus
But
it is.
Leviticus said,
What verse it is?
"Thou
sorry.
shalt not lie with a man as with a woman." You can clearly say Leviticus then meant, don't pretend your male lover was a woman.
Right.
You can still fuck a dude. Just
Yeah,
pretend
just
don't pretend
pretend he
he's
has
a
a
woman,
vagina.
and you're fine.
Yeah.
The same way Leviticus also said, "Thou shalt not spill your seed on the ground as a man."
Tell
It's
every
too
teenage
valuable.
boy. Tell every teenage boy that who's like, and every sock that they use.
No, they put it in a sock or a Kleenex.
It's not on the ground.
It's not on the ground.
It's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
The same way there are people who say you can like fuck your boy wife, just don't come in your boy wife, and you're totally on the side of God.
Right.
God is like, just don't climax in your boy, and you're fine.
Right.
Right.
Make
I
sure
love
your
it.
boy catches it on
Open
the
to
face.
interpretation.
If your boy catches it on the face, loophole, you get to go into heaven.
Yeah. And
We're
it's
good.
good for your skin. So you
God.
know what? Boom.
Facials are the way into heaven.
Yeah. There we go.
Facials are on the way to heaven and Pornhub. So
Welcome to our interpretation of Leviticus.
Both will provide.
both. Both will provide.
But truly, for all of the gatekeepers who are saying now
Yes.
you can't say X, Y, or Z, you or your parents or your aunts and uncles would have been the very same people in the 80s
Yes.
who said you can't mention Dungeons and Dragons because
Why?
there's demons
The
mentioned.
sadness is that your aunts and uncles and parents are the ones getting Dungeons and Dragons taken away from them.
Yes.
So it was done to them. They hated it, and now they turned around and did it to us.
They're
Yeah.
kicking it down the road.
Yeah.
This is just the horror of it. Like, it's just getting worse and worse on us. You didn't like
Yes.
it, but then you're going to turn around and just do it?
Yes.
Instead of
Exactly.
go, okay, I didn't like that. I'm not going to do that.
But in much the
We're
same
not
way
doing that anymore.
as
Let's
the
just
satanic
stop.
panic of the moment, here's where the nuance comes in, and that's disgusting for the internet. Nuance is like antithetical to the internet. In the very same way that the mention of Satanism or demons was problematic to Christians in the 80s, now the fact that people say orcs are just an evil race.
Yes.
Though that's problematic to the current gen
God.
of emotional and hypothetical fucking morality watchdogs. You can't just have goblins be evil. Heaven forbid the personification of evil, and you're supposed to have fun killing them. They now have to have their morality and their motivation justified, as opposed to, if I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons, I just want a bunch of people who are okay to kill. If you now make orcs humans plus a hat, they're humans wearing a hat and they're slightly different than us. Why am I murdering all these orcs with my 2d12 fucking rolls?
What?
I should actually be, calm down. I should actually now be befriending them. I should be befriending all of the goblins and orcs and
Yes.
etc. and demons in D&D.
Add to that the fact that now orcs and goblins are racist. Against whom? Blacks.
You think I look like an orc?
Said I look like an orc?
Are you kidding me?
Are you insane? What
I'm
the
Puerto
fuck
Rican.
are you saying?
I'm Puerto Rican. Does that mean I'm like 1/8 goblin?
Like,
Probably.
what are you doing?
getting at?
And I'm
All right.
and I'm Jewish. What does
Quiet.
that make me, a dwarf?
Quiet.
Yeah.
Quiet.
There you go. You said
Quiet,
it yourself.
Jew. Quiet, Jew. Back to the mountain.
But this is what I'm saying. You're doing this to save me, and all you're doing is insulting the shit out of me.
But if I wanted to play a demon, are you now saying I can't roleplay as a demon because it's offensive?
It's offensive.
If
To
I
whom?
wanted to play as a paladin who's like a holy primarch of his holy religion, is that now offensive? Even though all he wants to do is good. Is playing an orc the way an orc is meant to be played wrong because your dumb restructionist ass thinks they're now black? No.
That's
They're
the problem. That's
actually-
what they've
problem.
been saying.
That yeah.
Even if you wanted to break this down across racial lines, the orcs are meant to be basically Europeans. The worst of Europeans mixed in with the Mongol horde.
Yeah.
Which, if you talk to some European historians, the Mongol horde is the steppe. The steppe includes Poland. Hey, Polish
Hello.
girl.
Hello.
Are
that's
you
me.
happy to be compared to a fucking orc?
No, I'd
Or
rather
you-
be compared to a fucking dwarf
Or
from
you
Lord of
just
the
look
Rings.
at it, or you just look at it and go, "Oh yeah, that's a fictional character who couldn't exist."
Uh-huh.
Because let's be honest, if there were orcs and elves and dwarves and everything else in the historical
Fantasy.
D&D fantasy, the things that come
Genre.
along with Tolkien's interpretation, where would humans fall in?
Right.
We got the dwarves who are king of the mountains. We have the elves who are king of the fucking forests. And we have the orcs who are king of the steppe. Where is there left for humans to evolve? This is clearly
you're
a
just
fiction.
man. You're just man,
It's a
and
fiction.
men fuck up everything.
Yeah.
But truly, even the nerds who've looked into this, when you have all of the other territories covered, where does man come from? The desert? So now am I supposed to feel offense because I'm playing anyone in D&D who's a human who's not now looking like an Iranian? Somebody
Yeah,
who's not
true.
looking like
That
they
is
can come
true.
from Syria?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, clearly, the humans would have been priced out of this little smorgasbord.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anywhere green is spoken for. Or are we playing a fictional game that involves dice and cardboard cutouts?
Yes. Yes.
You spoke too soon. You're canceled. But these things are all spoken of by people who have too light of a skin and not enough life experience.
Yes.
From my perspective.
Oh my god.
Because the joke online is, orcs are offensive for these reasons, etc. They're a wild horde with no culture and they're too violent and they should be cancelled because they're clearly Africans. What?
Lord.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Out of control.
They should be clearly canceled because they're Irish.
Yeah.
Like, there's
About to say.
a number of things you can
Fuck.
point to in human history that says the orcs are this. Most of the D&D, the Tolkien that we read, are created by English.
Yes.
Clearly, the orcs are meant to be Scottish and Irish.
Probably.
Probably.
Africans don't even enter fucking into it because of
Yeah.
racism.
Right.
If we're really going to draw this along racist lines, then you shouldn't play them because potato famine.
Yes. Right.
If we're going against like what skin tone you are, and we're going to like Tolkien realm, black people are the black riders.
Yeah.
If anything, they're the Urukai.
Yeah, if you want to say that they're even represented.
And
if
even
you
then-
want to say that they're even represented, because they're actually not represented in
at
any
all.
of it.
No, and even then,
Everyone's
Tolkien,
all angelical whites.
Yeah,
Tolkien-
even the people who get morphed
Morphed
into
into
Urukai
And
are
Tolkien
white
being-
lands. Yeah.
Tolkien being a devout Christian
Yes.
who had access to a number of ancient
Texts.
European texts that he was one of the few people who could understand because he was a linguist.
Yeah.
Even through Tolkien's lens, the orcs were simply
Elves that were manipulated.
Elves that are in hell.
and tortured.
elves
Yes.
that have gone through
Through
hell and have now resurfaced to Earth, Middle Earth, and are doing the bidding of literal
others.
demons.
Yes.
As far as he was concerned,
Yeah.
that
There was no race played into that.
Exactly.
no, the problem lies in the fact that yes, there's been a great many transgressions against non-whites.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, it seems all of human history is game of musical chairs.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we had decided no more colonies when China was on top, you'd be talking about how the orcs were meant to be Germans. Because the Germans were basically forest dwellers who hadn't created anything beyond a mud hut.
Right.
Yeah.
And they still intended on attacking the Romans, who are
Right.
clearly their social
Superior.
betters.
Right.
They're social
If you want to
superiors.
see it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the way Tolkien addressed it.
Yeah.
These are elves who he more or less kind of locked into the development of Celtic
Right.
individuals, whether they be Finnish or Irish. The elves were Celtic, and the orcs were literally elves, Celtic folk,
Yeah.
going through hell, who are now antithetical to the Celtic people's belief.
Correct.
And that is the lens through which you should discover it. You should discover Sam and
Frodo.
Dildo as closest of friends, not as secret gay lovers that the fucking that the Shire couldn't deal with. They were just super close guy friends, and that's fine.
And that's fine.
That's fine.
From that time period, that was a thing.
Mary,
So,
Mary
but now
and
it's-
Sherry and their fancy little horse, wait, no, tree, was not supposed to be bestiality.
Right.
It was supposed to be Mary and Sherry accomplish something with a clan of people who don't care about the English, about the Celts, and now saying, look at your people being put to the torch.
Right.
Don't you care now? They were probably Romanian.
Right.
No.
Let's be honest.
Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
Tree
the-
folks were supposed
the
to be
tree-
Romanian.
No, I honestly think the tree folks were supposed to be indigenous.
Probably.
If
Seems like
anything,
it
they
to
might have
me.
been indigenous.
That's
But
By
also-
indigenous, do you mean English? Because the English are indigenous to England. That's a fucked up word.
That's
Indigenous just means of that space.
whatever. But
No, you're right. You're right. Because if we're talking about the English, you're talking about the English. If you're talking about the Americans,
we're
you're talking about something
yeah.
else.
But again, it's also through the lens of what we interpret it as being as what we believe what the text is actually saying,
Right.
without having the actual person who created the text to actually be alive and around to correct us.
Yeah.
Correct us and say no, that's actually not what I was trying to say, and because
But
that
even if they were alive-
even if they were alive, they
You know-
probably wouldn't have told us anyway.
No, the problem is also in this day and age, I feel like we're all in the headspace of even if Tolkien was alive and went, I didn't say that, I didn't mean that. You go,
care.
what do
What
you
do you
know?
know?
You're the writer. You don't know anything about what you meant when you wrote it.
Don't
Exactly.
care,
Death
didn't
of the
ask.
author.
Don't
Boo!
care, didn't ask, plus you're white.
Plus, exactly,
That
and,
would've
and
been
that
the
would be the
response to
thing.
it.
That would honestly
And it's
be
no
the response,
coincidence that
especially
when-
the white part,
Yeah, and it's no coincidence
white,
that
old,
when
and English.
yeah, I fuck the English, but it's no coincidence when Christopher Tolkien, his last surviving child, who heard this fucking thing as a goddamn bedtime story.
Yeah,
As soon as he dies, everything becomes open to interpretation. Oh, the rights owners suddenly want money as opposed to textual fucking honesty.
Yeah.
Because again, Tolkien...
Amazon.
yeah.
Sellouts.
Yes. Tolkien deliberately hated any kind of stand-in and metaphor.
Yeah,
he wanted to be one for one. This is what I mean when I say this. So when he shows Sam and Dildo, I believe his name is.
Yes, that's his
when
name.
he shows them as being
Frodo.
best of friends, yeah, that's what I said. When he shows them as being best of friends, he
Elijah
means
Wood.
that to be a stand-in for two English boys
Yes,
who
are
didn't
good
know any
friends.
better, weren't worldly, didn't have the kind of global connections we have as Westerners. They only knew the Shire. They only knew
The farmland.
pigs in a blanket for kind of breakfast. They only knew like a limited kind of culture.
True.
And
Yeah.
everything else was literal demons and fucking just
Monsters.
problematic other races,
Yeah.
like Moroccans. They only understood the other races have it wrong. That was viewed through the lens of Tolkien, who got drafted into World War One, not World War Two, where we all agreed there was a common demon.
Yes.
World War One, which was largely,
What the fuck was this happening?
it was largely just a treaty war.
Yeah.
It was that boy is in war, and we have treaties with them, so we're in war. This is how we do fight the Kaiser.
Yeah. Basically.
It's no different than the boy like myself, who was born into the 80s and saw all these MK Ultra, G.I. Joe, He-Man cartoons and felt the need to go be a warrior. And then suddenly when the new crop of kids come up in the 90s, everything stops from being warrior and into, let's make some friends.
Yeah,
Let's make friends.
my generation. Let's be friends with everyone.
Gross.
Let's be nice to everyone. Let's show everyone kindness. When a decade before you're like,
Gross,
oh,
take their head.
either that or just like, oh, they're different. You don't want to be friends with this person. They're different. They don't believe the same way that you do, or they're attracted to a different sexuality than you are. So let's leave them off to the curb. Let's ostracize them. And let's be what we are supposed to be as a society. Kumbaya!
And to get back to the controlling thought of this particular episode, if YouTube was around in the 80s, you wouldn't be allowed to talk about Stonewall.
No, you
If
wouldn't be allowed to
YouTube
talk
was
about
a-
a lot of things.
If YouTube was around in the 80s, you wouldn't be able to talk about how HIV is a huge pandemic
Right.
amongst the gay community.
Right.
Because a lot of people who would have been considered the moral middle
Right.
considered gay and HIV to be synonymous. It's not our problem.
Right.
It's just those degenerates.
But
Yeah.
there's also another thought is like you wouldn't be talking about black violence.
Yeah.
You people say, you mean black on black violence?
No.
Yeah.
That's what you would equate it as. You
Do
would
you
say
mean black
on.
gang violence?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Black gangs hurting each other.
Right.
Not violence,
Violence
against
against
blacks.
If I would have said the government was proven to have sold crack to many ghetto communities and people in the ghetto who are drug dealers,
Yeah.
if I would have said that in the 80s,
Canceled.
I would have
Canceled
been
immediately.
canceled completely,
Immediately.
probably arrested.
Yeah.
If
Thrown
I
in
say
jail.
that now in the 20s,
Everyone's
people
like,
go,
yeah, absolutely,
well, yeah,
yeah.
of course,
So,
I've seen that documentary.
Yeah, I know
that
that
makes
they did
perfect
that.
sense.
Totally
Yeah.
did that, yeah.
Freeway Rick Ross. Like that
Jesus.
one rapper ripped off his fucking name like a little bitch. But Freeway Rick Ross of the fucking 80s actually supplied most of the West Coast to the fucking middle of America with all of their crack.
Right.
Yeah.
You smoke some freebase, you smoke Rick Ross's freebase.
Right.
Right.
But
And
if you had said that then, what
You
would
would-
have happened to you?
Yes.
You would have been silenced immediately.
Right.
The same way.
Immediately.
The same
And
way.
not in a fun, friendly way silenced.
No.
You would have been gagged.
Yes.
Yeah.
Physically.
Literally.
Completely. The
Yeah.
same way if you played Dungeons and Dragons and tried to say, oh, but my patron saint is a demon, you would have now been excommunicated
Right.
when it mattered. And you would have been kicked
Yeah,
out
true,
of your
true.
particular little tribe.
Yeah.
Our laughing friend
back in the
here.
day, it mattered when you got excommunicated.
When it mattered.
Yeah, no. It was
Our
a big
laughing
deal.
our laughing friend here is Jewish, but she would have clearly been kicked out for worshiping like a sun god.
Yeah.
Who like now
Apollo?
was going probably
Basically.
who's now going antithetical to the Torah.
Right.
And we would have been kicked out for the same sun
Right.
god.
Yeah.
Because don't you know we stole all the sun gods like fancy feast days for Jesus.
Right.
So you should be worshiping Jesus.
Right. Always worship Jesus.
There's always a sliding scale as to what the morality police will come for you.
Yeah.
There's always been a sliding scale as to what's permitted and what's verboten. What's thought crime. Only now, because so many of us talk into everyone's goddamn face, we consider anything that's not our niche, pigeonholed position thought crime.
Right.
Yeah.
If you believe Bernie is wrong, thought crime. If you believe Biden is wrong, thought crime. You believe Trump is wrong. If you believe Elizabeth Warren is wrong,
physical crime. No. Okay.
thought crime.
Seriously.
Everything is thought crime as opposed to difference of opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything is satanic panic as opposed to, am I not your brother?
Right.
Right.
Do we not simply have difference of opinion as to how to take care of ourselves and our community better? Or am I literally the devil because I want your kids to wear a mask in school? Am I literally the devil because I want them to take a shot? Am I literally the devil because I say they shouldn't take a shot because chances are they'll survive the fucking COVID? Any number of things are now the purity test, which we are all applicable to failing. At the slightest difference of opinion, you could have your entire livelihood taken from you.
Yep.
Yeah.
You could have your entire social life taken from you.
Case
Please.
in point, there is a Broadway actress who just got fired. I'm not sure from what project, but all that the article said was that she was fired because she refused to get the vaccinated. So just because she refused to get a vaccination for COVID, when all honesty, COVID could honestly get 10 times worse, and getting the vaccination will do fuck all for you.
They're already
down the
saying
line. They're already saying that
the
it
Lambda
basically is
variant may be
even
just-
worse. And
Yeah.
it'll make the vaccine defective.
Yeah.
Great, which is fucking great. But the fact that they fired her for not getting a vaccination right now,
For simply voicing
her concern and her opinion, is just, it speaks larger volumes than actually getting vaccinated and having to be penalized,
Or
simply accepting
that she doesn't want to
she
get
doesn't
it.
want
But
to
if
get
you
it.
have it, then the majority doesn't have it. Then the few that do not want to get it, what does it affect you?
Exactly.
It doesn't affect you at all.
It doesn't.
It should be irrelevant.
Yeah,
It's exactly.
because you have it, so it does not matter whether or not someone else chose not to get it.
But
Exactly.
now we've been lied to.
Yeah.
And a few months ago they said, if you get the vaccine, you will not be infected. Now they're saying, if you get the vaccine, you will not die.
You will not die. If
You'll
you
get a
sick,
lesser
you'll get
version.
sick. You'll get sick,
The
but you
same
won't
way,
die.
the same way they were saying, do not wear the masks. They do nothing. And then Fauci douchey said, wear the masks. They are everything. What are we supposed
What
to
are we
believe?
supposed to believe? Exactly. What
Where
are
do
we
we
supposed
tap
to believe?
in and you
Where-
have the truth for us? And it's illegal now to post these opinions
Opinions
online
online.
because you
Are
will lose
going-
your livelihood.
you're going
You'll
against
lose your
everything.
hobby.
Yeah.
You're going against
What
the
society
moral-
is telling you to do.
The new form of excommunication.
the
Exactly.
obvious moral line.
Yeah.
The same way in the Satanic Panic, if you listen to some Ozzy Osbourne, you're probably somebody who should be arrested.
Yeah.
But then in the 90s, if you watched the Osbournes, you were somebody who enjoyed a good laugh. Oh, look at them.
Yep.
Aren't they funny?
They
Yeah.
were the Kardashians of the 90s.
Yeah.
It's true.
Meanwhile, 10 years prior, the man bit a head off a bat.
Right.
Wasn't that
And-
by accident?
Yeah, he thought it was a prop bat, but it was a live bat. But because of that moment, you were literally Satan.
Because he pissed on the Alamo.
Both.
What?
But he bit the bat first, then he pissed on the Alamo.
Yeah.
And I won't lie, don't piss on the Alamo.
Yeah, it's not
What are you
cool.
doing?
That sounds cool.
David Bowie. He had a knife. Just don't do that. We don't have to do that. Just fucking-
But it's
Again,
also,
but freedom of speech if you want to piss on the Alamo.
yeah, seriously.
I don't know
Whatever,
that
dude.
piss is speech.
Well,
No,
is burning a
red
flag
flag is
speech?
Yes, just because I would say that's clearly going to amass an audience of viewers /
Right, so the
spectators.
pissing on the Alamo, which I don't even know if he did it on purpose, to be very
No,
honest.
I think
Again,
he was just too
was
drunk, and
he was
pissed
just
on the
aiming
Alamo
in any direction.
because it was a corner.
Again, censorship.
Yeah. It's hard to know anymore.
And honestly, and it goes against also, like, censorship kind of goes hand in hand with political correctness. Because everyone, like, you feel like you really can't say anything on any platform just because you feel like you're walking on eggshells.
Right.
And where's the line?
Where is the line? And honestly, there is, like my generation and the new generation are all either they're going off of YouTube, but they're all going to TikTok. And a lot of people that I follow on TikTok, they're being either their posts are being taken down by TikTok because, according to TikTok's rules and guidelines, they're saying something that goes against what TikTok themselves believe, not the people who view their videos believe. Mm-hmm. So, where is the line? Like, who actually really has the authority to say, no, you can't say this? The platform that says, oh, you can say whatever you want on here, there's really as long as you don't do anything illegal, you're fine. But where does that line draw with them?
Right.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's a TikToker, I'm not going to say her name on the video, but she's recently been taken down from being able to live stream on TikTok because, from TikTok's point of view, she has done something that is not so that doesn't really settle with them. But all she did was post a cosplay.
Right.
That they thought was there was too much nudity, where she was basically wearing a t-shirt and a wig.
I didn't see it,
And I'm watching this and I'm like, this is ridiculous. But she also happens to be a person of color.
Yeah, she's black.
So I also feel like that's also TikTok kind of being more leaning towards the white racist people who are controlling TikTok.
Yeah.
And here's the problem.
And it's
at
kind
what
of
point do we okay you to be the arbiter of culture?
Exactly.
At what point are we okay with you deciding what we see?
Exactly.
Because again, as somebody who grew up in the 90s, if you saw a black on white kiss, it had to be explained.
Right.
My wife and I were recently watching Deep Space Nine because we're nerds. Shut up. We're giant nerds, and shut up. And of course, Commander Sisko has his first love interest beyond his dead wife.
Right.
And of course, it has to be an alien who's clearly black-skinned. She has...
He found a black alien for him.
Yeah. She has, like, pointy Vulcan ears, but she has 2 points. Totally a different race. And she has dark-skinned. Clearly, she can walk up to Sisko. Like, these are things we've dealt with, and depending on...
We thought we dealt with.
And depending on the era you're in, you now feel okay to treat them a certain way. Like in this current era, if you ask me, and my opinion's as equal as any other human on this planet, if you ask me right now, how are we treating non-whites? We're treating them with kid gloves. We're treating them with kid gloves. You couldn't possibly rise up.
Yeah.
You couldn't possibly rise up out of poverty.
It is a shitty treatment.
You couldn't possibly rise up out of poverty if some white boy didn't, like, denounce his claim to Harvard so you could take his spot.
Oh my God.
You're not worthy of getting a spot over him.
Thing.
We couldn't possibly call out an Olympian the way we would have called out any other Olympian for not wanting to compete. Now, because she's a woman of color, we have to say, yes, queen, thank you for prizing mental health over everything we've ever said about Olympians.
Yeah.
Which is you should fucking die during your goddamn event.
As long as you get
the gold for the country.
As long as you get a gold over Russia, you should fucking die.
That was once the mentality.
That was once the mentality.
But
that
now,
was like,
because
what,
it's
30 years ago?
Yeah. I would say sooner.
That was like 4 years ago.
Swear to God.
Shit. Because we're suddenly aware of these foibles that we should have been aware of forever.
Yes.
Right.
Now, suddenly, the first person to call dibs gets lionized as a hero, as opposed to 10 years ago, they would have been vilified as someone who's a quitter.
Yeah.
There's
a million. Also say that the shift.
There's a million little black girls who want the spot you have. I know you failed them.
That's what they're
saying.
Would have been the
narrative 10 years ago.
I would say 4 years ago. Like, you're not joking.
At
least.
Like, we're shifting.
And I do prize mental health more than I prize
physical strength
or
but also
national glory.
glory.
But
because this nation is fucking
No
piece.
buts. It's just the fact that I think it's interesting how quickly things are shifting now. You could once would have been like, 10 years ago this was the case, and now you're gonna be like 2 years ago
Yeah.
this was the case.
And that's what's honestly scary is like you feel like it's something like from a bygone era, but it's honestly a lot closer than you would
The ground
think.
is shifting
And
faster and faster.
It really does. And it's like looking like when you look at television, especially television, because like especially shows like maybe The Simpsons or Saturday Night Live,
Yeah.
Family Guy, where they make fun of literally anything and everything under the sun, there is a point where you look at it and you're like, I don't find this particularly funny anymore, because the earlier the episodes were, from whatever time, like whatever era, either the 70s, 80s, or 90s, it would be funnier than they would be in the aughts, because they had less to deal with either censorship or political correctness, and they honestly there was no safety net underneath them, so they were able to take risks like that. Like,
Right.
even, like, case in point, Family Guy actually makes fun of the censorship.
Prom night dumpster baby.
Right.
I was talking about like them making fun of the FCC in general, but
Also.
yes, that too, because they have a whole freaking song that said like basically makes fun of that the FCC cares that if you make a poop joke, you're censored.
Right.
If you but it's like something that is so common sense. That's something that everyone does. Like you can't say the word penis on TV.
Right.
You can't say the word bitch on TV.
At one point, you couldn't say pregnant on TV.
Exactly.
You had to say with
a
child.
Exactly. And it's like, where does the line shift? And where does the use of language shift?
Like, what was it,
Where
the
you can get
Munsters?
away with it. The Munsters.
The Munsters were the first, TV family to share a single bed, as opposed to having
the
separate
two
beds.
beds, like in
Yeah.
Bewitched or
The
Dick Van
Munsters
Dyke
were the
Show.
first family to, sleep together.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing.
Maybe they were allowed to do it because they're also monsters.
Monsters.
Well,
They're
yes.
monsters.
But I want to know how a vampire and a Frankenstein make a wolf boy.
That's true.
That is
Maybe
very
that.
true.
Maybe that's my concern. You
That's
race
very
traitor.
true.
That vampire clearly fucked a wolf man.
Somewhere.
Were they
Somewhere
adopted?
along the line.
Let's just
Maybe
be honest.
he could be adopted.
Maybe like everything that Frankenstein put into the creature didn't actually all work.
Possibly.
Maybe some of it was a wolf man.
Maybe
Yeah.
so.
His dick was a wolf man's dick.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Did Herman Munster have a red rocket?
Maybe.
Never know.
But the point of all this
Wait.
is when you move the goalposts, you can't be expected to be respected.
Correct.
Because when I was growing up, married with children was something
Oh my God.
progressive. It was progressive. It gave us the ability to talk about
Was it
certain
progressive
things.
or offensive?
Mel Brooks comedies were progressive.
Yes.
They gave us the ability to talk about certain things. Now they'd be seen as reductive because you're using stereotypes.
Exactly.
You're
And
using-
exactly.
You're using pat, easy statements to talk about this race or this sex.
And that's why,
And
like,
you're limiting it to just something simple. To which I say, isn't that what we're supposed to do?
Exactly.
We're humans. Do we not tell each other stories? Do we not tell each other stories of, the wolf man, who means don't be so avarice. Don't be so, predatorial. Is that not why we tell wolfman stories?
Do we
also,
still?
also to be
I
scared.
didn't know that we did. I
I
thought
don't
we were
think
just
we
stuck on
done with
vampires.
vampires.
Well, Twilight, Team Jacob,
Oh,
all
fuck.
day,
Team Jacob.
Oh my god.
all day, bitch. Are you denying the Eskimo
Well, it's fine.
Wolfman?
It's fine. I'm not denying
The
it.
Eskimo Wolfman with extensions?
I'm not
Are
denying
you really
him.
going to deny him?
I'm not. I'm
canceled.
not.
Listen.
You're canceled, and your
Listen.
children are canceled. Everyone listening to this is canceled. Canceled.
I'm gonna go
Listen.
sit in the cancel corner.
with the
I'll be
cancel.
back.
Nobody was Team Bella. You were all canceled.
I'm gonna put that cone on my head and go sit in the
with
cancel
with
corner.
the canceled dunce cap on the head.
Yeah, here I go.
Yeah.
Here I go.
Yeah, but it's literally where everything nowadays, especially that I'm noticing with my generation and the generation after me, is that everything is identical. Like you look at
Safe.
everything is safe. Everything is the same. Music sounds the same. Television is all the same. Movies are all the same, or they're just beating a dead horse because they're out of ideas and they don't know how to push an envelope
But the
anymore.
problem is you're afraid to push that
But
envelope.
exactly, people are too afraid to push the envelope, which is honestly what we're trying to do
Right.
with our show.
Right.
But it's just because that Hollywood and just entertainment nowadays are just so comfortable being in the little bubble that they've created.
I don't know how comfortable they are, but they feel safe.
They
So that's
feel-
a felt
well,
comfortable.
it's
You're right. That's
comfortable.
comfortable.
It's
Safety is comfortable.
So like they're
Yeah.
so comfortable in the bubble that they've created, and they feel like they've worked so hard to create after being told no for so many years.
Because they know it
Because
gets
they know it
guaranteed
gets it
returns.
earns. Exactly. So because they know that they can make an income after with something that they know that works, instead of trying something that's new and trying to take a gamble on it.
Right.
That's why movies like anything that Mel Brooks did, movies like Tropic Thunder, all these movies that were that pushed the envelope, that were lightning in a bottle films that I feel that you could sadly no longer be made in this day and age.
Well, Hollywood
cannot make them because everyone is too politically
simply couldn't
correct.
get the funding.
You couldn't get the funding, and B, everyone is so politically correct and so fragile, politically controlled, but also just mentally fragile.
Yeah.
And
That they
mentally
cannot
controlled.
and mentally controlled that they
You're
can't
kept in
that they
your little
cannot
box.
that they cannot fathom the idea of trying something new,
Right.
and really trying to open up more ideas.
Sadly, as our experience has been pushing this show, and again, we won't talk about the show too much during this podcast. We want to talk about larger concepts. But our experience pushing this show has been, oh, you can't make that joke.
What?
Okay, let's
What?
just go ahead and Mel
Mel
Brooks,
Brooks, Sacha Baron-
MASH,
Sacha Baron Cohen,
fucking Jojo Rabbit.
Jojo Rabbit.
Let's just go for it.
Yeah.
You can make these jokes, obviously.
Yes.
There are giant human foibles launched into large portions of our history. They're just stuck in there.
Yeah.
And at some point, if you don't address them, you're giving them too much power.
Right.
The Nazis, ooh, big scary monsters who couldn't understand not to start a war on all fronts when you have no resources. Oh God, such genius monsters that are worthy of the ultimate vilification spot in humanity. They're fucking they're chumps. They're not even as competent as the Soviet Russians
They're
were.
just angry
and
workers.
the Soviet Russians fell without a war.
They were just angry workers, and they just needed scapegoats to just make themselves feel better. And their whole ideology is just built on sand
Yes.
Yeah.
from a fucking pub in Germany.
As I always say, even Hitler had a problem with all the excavations trying to find the glory of ancient Germany, and etc., etc. And even Hitler was like, Himmler needs to stop doing these digs. All he's finding is old campsites with fires when everyone else was building temples. He's making us look bad. Even within their own
he
stupid
did.
little
He did.
party, they had
Nothing.
misunderstandings about their glory.
They had nothing.
What was glorious?
They had
even?
They had nothing. They were like, "Oh, we're the glorious Germans. We're the glorious Third
We're
Reich.
the Aryans.
We're
Do you
the
mean
Aryans."
Do you
But
mean
we-
the Indians?
That's true.
Literally, we're the Aryans, but we have nothing glorious to show for it.
Right. We don't
Oh,
have
no.
that history.
The
It's
Indians
someone
are
else's
what
history.
left. The Indians are what is left when the Aryans left that territory, and what you gave it over to
Yeah,
other
their own
people,
people.
and then you decide to live like wolves in the fucking woods.
Basically,
Even your own line of thought was fucking bananas.
You
Yeah.
didn't want to accept your own
Own
history.
history.
You were
You kept changing
recreating
it. You
a
kept
history
changing it.
and taking other people's history because you felt like your history was even beneath you.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with people who had mud huts and campfires. There's nothing wrong with that.
You're just
I
saying that
see-
because you're Irish.
Yeah, I am actually, and I'm Puerto Rican. There's nothing wrong with that. But when your own party is built on the ideology,
ideology.
Oh.
exactly that word, ideology, that you were Rome in your own right, and it's not true.
It's not.
That's not who you were. So you're then lying to yourself. You're belittling yourself. You're demeaning your own culture and pretending you're someone else.
And let's not get started on the white supremacists.
Oh.
Let's not even get freaking started.
No.
You think you're pure? You think you're pure white? Take an Ancestry.com test. Come back to me.
Yeah.
What does pure white mean?
What does that even mean?
What
That
does
you're
that
albino?
even mean?
That you're albino?
Scotch, Irish, Spaniard, German,
You don't tan.
Italian.
Spaniards are
You
white
just don't
now?
tan. You just don't tan. That's pure white.
Yeah,
you don't
okay.
tan.
Then what does that matter? You know what I mean?
Even
But-
then, did you
that
not?
goes in the show.
Even then, did you not steal gunpowder from the Chinese?
Right.
Did you not steal?
Did you not steal gunpowder from the Chinese and give them opium?
Thank you, England.
Thank you so much,
Worse,
England.
they had the opium themselves, and then England
Brought them
demanded
more.
they grow more fucking poppies to now feed into England's opium habit, And when the Chinese said, no thank you, England decided to cause a war over their ability to secure some opium.
Yeah.
Like, this is the history of the world.
Yeah.
You
If
could
you
have...
don't do something, we fight you for it. If we want something from you, we fight you for it and we take it, or we lose to you and we're like, oh yeah, yes, sure, we actually don't want it as much as we thought we did, so you guys can have it. Vietnam.
Yeah.
But
Afghanistan
opium.
Oh, Oxycontin's super cheap right now, y'all.
Wonder
I
why.
can't imagine why.
Oil is so cheap right now, y'all. Let's get oil from the Middle East. Why? Because we can.
Right.
And historically, here's the scope of history. We've always been made to hate the poppy growers in Afghanistan, hypothetically. As opposed to the very Western, very white, very American families who are pushing Oxycontin on people.
Yeah.
To the point where you go to the dentist now and have a tooth pulled, and the best they got for you is some, like, Advil.
Yeah.
Whereas you could warrant, like, a heavier treatment. It's just we have such a problem now because
You can't even get anesthesia.
one small and privileged family decided to push opium on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's our censorship.
But that's, again, with censorship, it's just who controls the censorship.
Yes.
And honestly, and it's like, whether it's YouTube or television or just, hell, even just music, it all depends on who holds the keys to the kingdom.
And that shifts.
And then that shifts daily
Yes.
to the point where it is so dizzying that you don't know what's up from down.
Especially here in the West.
Especially in the West.
Irish and
even in
Italians
England.
weren't white at some point, and yet now people are projecting that maybe Hispanics will be seen as white because there's too many of them and they're fairly pale. Like, this is all sliding sand that we built our castles on.
Yeah.
If Alejandro can be white, is that any different than, like, Octavio, who was seen as white?
Yeah.
Any different than McFadden, who was now seen as white because he was Irish?
Right.
This is all the same, like, Bushwick.
Yeah.
Ballywick.
And again, it's all about who controls the censorship, who controls the keys to honestly just be able to say, this is what it is, and you can't say anything about it or else we will shut you the fuck down.
This is full citizenship, and anything less is second class.
Correct.
That's where we've always found ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's the end of the rant for this week. We might continue on this topic next week.
Probably. This is a very large topic.
Because you're all racist. Every last one of you, especially the black and anyone who's now a so-called minority, you're probably more racist than anyone.
Yeah.
So
You're probably more racist than the actual white people who are actually... The poll has actually recently been taken that the whole portrait of America has changed and that white people are honestly the underdogs now, because only 61% of the United States is white.
never mind that the nearest class to them is only 20% something of the country, the Hispanics. Hispanics, start teaching your grandchildren about their racist privilege.
Yes.
That's what we're saying. Get ahead of the curve. Teach them how Cinco de Mayo is a hate crime, and we'll all be on an equal footing.
Absolutely.
So
But
here's part
until
one
then-
of a continuing series of censorship.
Part 1 of 852.
Basically. So we'll see what you. That was us for this week, and we'll see you next week.
Yes.
So that was me. Bye.
Go
Bye.
away. Go away.